the dissociation, the freeze being like an opioid, and that's scary. I go to the freeze a lot, but I hate it. Like I get stuck there and I feel trapped. I feel like that's when everything bad is going to happen. And so as soon as I can start that cortisol, as soon as I can start, whether it's eating, whether it's micromanaging or obsessing about reorganizing the dishes or something, as soon as I can get out of that, I call it my momentum. As
Exactly.
soon as I can get active, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. As soon as I don't have to think, feel, I can just move, then I'm safe. I like to be awake and on and going, 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 but I can't
Exactly.
sustain that. And then I crash and feel
Exactly.
vulnerable and terrified. It's the
Exactly.
cycle.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I can add one more piece, and it ties in with codependency. So what happens to a child who's had to freeze because they can't fight or flight, but the people that mom and dad who aren't meeting their needs, who are hurting them, neglecting or abusing them, they still need them to meet their needs. So they go to the fourth F, which is fawning. So I will be what you want me to be. I will give up all my rights and all my needs and please you constantly. I'll never say no. I'll become a people pleaser just so that you will let me survive. And so that sets a person up for codependency. Um, so many people who end up in codependency are fawners. That's how they've had to survive as a child. And so that's now their go to for surviving. Um, Whereas some, like you talked about, Steph, would be, okay, I'm feeling myself freezing. I have to get active. So I need a shot of cortisol. And so you go to extreme activity. So what for many people with fawning is opioids are happening, but you try to get a bit of cortisol happening so that you can become attuned again to somebody else. So you can get into action again. And that helps you with your own anxiety. That helps you with your own internal feelings because I feel in control again. I feel I can handle things again. And so again, it's trying to adapt to handle the extreme freeze feeling.
I see that completely. I see too that if I feel like I am doing enough, it's I think
Exactly.
going back to like I'm loved. Like if I
Exactly.
can be either doing what you want or doing enough activity, then I've earned value, I've earned worth, and I'm safe now because you're not going to leave. Whether it's being good enough myself or being what you need. And it's just that, like, I can't believe we're still in this cycle after all these years of work. I'm like, how is this still coming up? And here it
So
is.
if I can add one more piece that I think is important. So when I'm helping people with shame, codependency stuff, they need to understand their childhood, number one. But secondly, they need to understand family dynamics. And thirdly, culture. And so there's two sets of a set of family dynamics and a cultural element that actually support codependency. And it's important to understand that. So for a lot of families and cultures that are either shame based or certain types of religion, basically codependency was seen as love and humility was seen as shame. So if you stood up for yourself, you're being proud. If you validated yourself, you're being proud. You can't have a big head. So we got to keep putting you down so that you stay humble. So shame became equated with humility. And if you give all your needs away and sacrifice, wow, you're the most loving person in the world. And so cultures, shame-based cultures and certain religions actually teach codependency, but call it love, teach humility, or teach shame, but call it humility. And so what that does is it trains a little child's conscience that now if I stand up for myself, I'm being selfish. I am being proud. If I am not giving, I'm lazy. I'm not being loving. So now you have a ton of false guilt on top of everything else because you were trained with the wrong definition of love and the wrong definition of humility. And so part of the healing journey for people is being able to not just deconstruct their childhood, but to deconstruct their family belief systems and their cultural belief systems to begin to identify how their conscience was mistrained so that now they feel false guilt when they shouldn't feel guilt at all. Does that make sense?
I think it makes total sense.
Absolutely.
And again, it almost feels like we're screwed, Tim, because I feel like that's what, the Western society culture, I feel like we've talked about this a lot too, where it's like we have these early programs because we looked at things through this lens of like Disney movies, where my favorite Disney movie was Beauty and the Beast. And the Beast is, but seeing the dynamic of love play out in relationships on film and on TV, they're really, really toxic, terrible relationships that we're seeing portrayed. And yet it's love, and yet it's ideal, and yet it's the thing that we're all using to, and so it's like, how do we unpack it? Literally, it just feels like there's too much to process. We're bringing awareness to too many things to try to fix and change. And now I just want ice cream. And so,
yeah. And that's where I say to people, that's why we started our online lift program. And so it's 75 modules, which you can do it every day for 15 weeks, or you can do it twice a week or 3 times a week, and it goes longer. But anyways, it's realizing there's so much to unpack that you have to go through a systematic, careful process in doing that. To try to just do it on your own, it gets too overwhelming, or you miss kind of the right sequence of unpacking it, and you get the cart before the horse, and then you get all confused because this isn't working. And so it's really realizing we need help to unpack this properly. And we're not just unpacking it, but we have to learn what healthy is in the process and tools to how to get healthy as part of that process as well. And it's got to be a gradual journey that somebody kind of walks with me on if I'm going to do it well. And so what I see with a lot of people is they can get a lot of help by watching my videos or reading books, or etc. But typically they grow to a certain point and then they stop. And it's like they can't seem to get beyond that point. And it's what I've seen is because they need somebody with more experience to come in and point out what they can't see yet. And that's just the reality, that we still have blind spots in our own healing journey, and we need help from compassionate people with wisdom and insight.
We were meant to be. We were meant to be.